Hello YouTube and welcome back. We got another episode of the arena builds after 1 month of the patch. We've done these in the past. It's a nice review of what people are trying to take into the arena and do as many ways as possible. This is the endless arena. It's the one that has no end. It's not the arena of champions, and it's certainly not the arena that you find in the Monolith of Fate either. So what we're going to do here is have a nice long video. We're going to talk about all builds that look noteworthy, that have done nice performance over 500 waves, and like the rank 1 build of each of the individual masteries in Last Epoch. We will not be looking at any hardcore builds. What this means for you is that we will have lots of timestamps in the YouTube video. Please feel free to click around, and I will have linked in the description all the build planners as well if you want to poke around. And of course, we're doing this by looking at lastepochtools.com/ladders. So this is just a web-friendly version of looking at the ladders that are available in-game. So we're not looking at builds that are under 500 waves. Under 500 waves doesn't seem to be particularly competitive. It seems like a nice cutoff point for looking at like the interesting builds that people are trying to push and like the high powered builds. And below 500 waves, I don't think it's like sufficiently competitive, and it would like cast too wide a net to try to show you more interesting builds that people are pushing with. So we are over 500 waves. We are soft core only. We are looking at the shared ladders, or like the like normal soft core, and we will also be looking at the solo stuff. There are 5 solo builds that I will particularly shout out. These are builds that differed in some way or were not represented in the normal softcore ladders, and I will call those out at the beginning of each of those 5. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. The very first one that we'll be looking at here is the rank 1 Void Knight character. So this first one is 1300 waves in the arena. This is a user runtu, so shout out to them. This is a shield throw manifest armor build in Merchant's Guild. So again, 1300 waves, and then again, this is snapshot. So snapshotting, for those of you who don't know, hopefully you do, means that before you summon a minion, you can put on a bunch of gear that benefits their HP. You summon the minion, and then you swap your gear to something else. And you basically have 2 sets of gear, and you're benefiting from both of them at the same time. It's just a mechanic that has always been in the game, unfortunately, and people are using it consistently because it's on a bunch of build guides, and the word of snapshotting has been spread far and wide. Hopefully it gets fixed at some point. We'll see. But let's call that out real quick. We have a note here called Force of Impact. It says your manifest armor gains melee physical damage equal to a proportion of the armor on your body armor. This node certainly does not make any sense while using a Mantle of the Pale Ox. However, Mantle of the Pale Ox is one of the strongest new unique items added in patch 1.2. So if you have any kind of minion or minion generation, this is a great thing to use to mitigate your own incoming damage from enemies. So most likely they have like a big body armor with a bunch of armor on it. You put that on, summon your manifest armor, and then swap over to Mantle instead. What you'll note for a bunch of these minion builds that we have Inheritance and the Erased, this is a nice thing to shout out because it's a brand new item that just got added in this patch. So Inheritance gives a bunch of stats from the amulet to a random chosen minion. And that minion, if you only have one of them, is always chosen 100% of the time. This means that when we get to like Necromancer, for example, you'll see that like A-bomb builds tend to be more popular than Wraith builds, because the Wraithlord helmet, the Wraithlord build summons a bunch of other minions, and it's harder to like get the Inheritance of the Erased to target the one minion that you want it to target. So there's a, I guess there's a bias toward one minion builds when we're considering the power of this new amulet here. Other new items to shout out are where this character is basically geared to be as tanky as possible. Countenance of Majasa has emerged as like the go-to shield for being tanky. In the past, people were using the melee crit multi void shield, Bulwark of the Last Abyss. It's also on an iron glass base, so it has that 35 block chance implicit, but it also has 20 block chance on it in addition, which is like really, really easy to cap your block with. The benefit of using Countenance instead is that sometimes it will, petrify or stop enemies from taking any game actions, which is really cool. Probably not the standout part of it, but it is very cool. Cute little form of defense. But it gives you a lot of damage mitigation for damage over time. So damage over time is like famously hard to mitigate in Last Epoch. It got trimmed this patch, but it's still quite rare. So I guess the trimming was only in Corruption, and then the Endless Arena is not in Corruption, but you know what I mean. So Countenance of Majasa says your block effect. A portion of your block effect applies to damage over time as if it had been blocked, which is a great layer of defense, especially when you're gearing as defensively as possible. You really have no problem getting max block. So that's this build here. This is 1300 waves in the arena. For the other Void Knight builds, we're going to take a look at 2 other ones and then 1 solo build, which I'll point out in just a moment. So these other Void Knight builds are also performing very well in Arena, and this one has a lot of popularity. This is just simply Erasing Strike. If you've seen content on YouTube or on Discord or on any kind of social media, then you know that like this Erasing Strike build, basically stock standard. Erasing Strike was a build that I played as well, and I played it because it was the world's first softcore kill of Uber Aberoth. And I wanted to have a good chance of killing Uber Aberoth too. So nothing here stands out to me. This is all like very stock standard. This person's gear is quite good. It's got double exalted, 2 LP, double T7 slams on its, end game items. So like it's a very strong version of the build, but it is just stock standard. So this person has 6.4k life. Holy moly, that's a lot of HP. But yeah, so that's the kind of build that people are taking into their arena right now as a Void Knight. The last build that I'll show you before we get to our solo build is this one, which is like, I guess not underrepresented, but we found one version of it. So one person was playing this. I know from my Twitch chat and Discord that there are other people who are just like beating up on Uber Aberoth with this thing, like just really cranking the DPS. So shout out to them for having a boss killing build that also performs pretty well in Arena. So this is a VK crit multi-smite build, and this particular person was playing in COF. So we have smite spec'd into void, as much crit damage, crit multi as possible. Multi-strike will be costing a lot of mana, because not only does this node cost mana, but every time that the echoes proc, they're going to be consuming mana down here as well. But it gives you gazunga single target damage. Devouring Orb has been like basically omnipresent in Void Knight builds. It does a little bit of everything. It gives you a little bit of damage down here. It automates itself, which is very nice. You don't need to click any buttons. It gives you a tiny bit of Void Shred, I guess. But most importantly, these 2 nodes here, doubled over 90 vitality. So this is 10 or double to 20% more void damage. Gives you a bit of mana regen. And up here gives you void essences. So the void essences were buffed in the patch 1.2 to give us more damage per void essence. I believe it's 3% more void damage per void essence. So a maximum of 3 of those. So I wouldn't say that's stock standard, but like if I were going to play this build, this is like the kind of thing I'd be looking for. Wrong Warp stands out as just like, it's an item that I'm surprised that it keeps getting used over a, what do you call it? Over Mad Alchemist Ladle. Mad Alchemist Ladle got nerfed. It is famously a wand that you'd otherwise be using for spells that can generate a lot of flat damage, because we have 140 vitality, which gives you 140 flat damage on smite. So you generate a lot of flat damage. Surely Mad Alchemist Ladle should be good here, because it's pretty easy to get like a 2 or 3 or sometimes even a 4 LP one of those. But Wrong Warp gives us haste. It gives us spell damage per movement speed, and we have an awful lot of movement speed, probably about 100% movement speed. And it's just like, that's the kind of thing that we're using. It's got enough spell damage on it. I just like it. Me talking about this is kind of like looking at EHG and saying like, this is the kind of build that ought to be using a Mad Alchemist Ladle. If this build doesn't, like, who's using Mad Alchemist Ladle? Could we buff it? Let's go buff it. All right, you and me, we're gonna get a buff together. All right. Good. Multi-strike, multi-smite, double red rings, lots and lots of defense. I love the looks of this, and I know that he has lots of damage. Last up, this is our first solo build. So our methodology for collecting all this information was first looking at all the non-solo stuff and doing a complete review of that, and then looking at the solo ladder and seeing if anything stood out above 500 waves in the arena. And this was a build that stood out to me. This was, I think it was the rank 1 build. I guess we can check this real quick, can't we? Arena, software, solo, VK. Yeah, so it was the rank 1 VK build with 762 in solo. And this is a Warpath build. So Warpath is back on the docket basically because of Clotho's needle here. When I think about like a Void Knight, crits Warpath build, I would start by like dual wielding, and I would use like an Eye of Reen plus something else. But then you're dual wielding, you have fewer options for defense. Maybe you have to go like a different body armor instead of Titan Heart. And like you're also taking % increased damage. So really a standout item that's been introduced in patch 1.2 is Clotho's Needle. So this thing is like the best the best two-handed sword base type in the game. And it's relegated to only being a unique item. So if you want this implicit modifier of 8 melee critical strike chance, I think it rolls from 5 to 8. I think that sounds right to me. Can I see it? I think it's 5 to 8. Let's see. Yeah, 5 to 8 melee critical strike chance as the implicit. If you can find a good version of this with just some damage or some crit multi or some attack speed, this is the kind of thing you just slap into a build and it's already so good. So the melee damage implicit and the melee damage explicit adds up to 180. And of course, it's not typed, it's untyped, which means it's adaptive, which means all of this becomes void damage. So it's all going to scale with like the more melee void damage per vitality. And like any other void damage increases that a void knight will get access to, which is a lot because they tend to like void damage over anything else. So that new item really puts this back on the radar. It's really good too. So I wouldn't expect this to be like the best build, and it's not the best build, but I know it's a fan favorite and I see that it's performing well here. And I know for a fact that this build farms monoliths super quickly. So I'm unsurprised to see someone take their build and try it out in an arena with success as well. So 700 waves there. Let's take a look at the next ones. Next up is Paladin. Whew. Oh, I guess it's worth noting, like, of course, Void Knight was the most popular. Paladin was also the most popular. You know that already, and you can kind of intuit that. I will tell you when we get to the 3 classes that were tied for the least popular, or the 3 masteries that were tied for the least popular. So moving on to Paladin here, the highest Paladin build was, or I guess the build that people played was Judgement, which is unsurprising to you because Judgement was a build that was very, very popular in hardcore. There was a race for people in hardcore to kill Uber Aberoth first. People got $5,000 for winning, so shout out to them. Yeah, and a lot of those people, especially the hardcore ones, were playing this build right here. So this is a Judgement ground build. Like it's not aura around your character, just stacking the ground to the ground. So one thing that stands out is like Judgement has this node over here that repeatedly cleanses ailments on you. So in something like the Uber Aberoth fight, having access to this is a pretty good place to start your build. Beyond that, we have Vengeance, not only to generate mana, but also to give us some bonus defenses. And like, if you're around Last Epoch and you've been watching content recently, this build is again, super stock standard to you. What stood out to me, which is like kind of interesting about this build, is that we also have a Pale Ox. So when I've seen this build in the past, I've seen people using the Null Portent. Null Portent is the unique body armor that drops from Aberoth. So this thing here gives you some extra DR. Pale Ox is interesting. I haven't seen this variation, maybe y'all have, but Vengeance down here is being spec'd to summon a bunch of forged weapons. So we have a couple points over here for forged weapons per attunement, and then 1 point down here for some extra chance to summon forged weapons. So if we have any forged weapons, we're getting extra DR off of Mantle of the Pale Ox. I don't know if this is something that translates well into Uber Aberoth, because like your minions probably die pretty quickly, but in an arena situation where the ground is not necessarily all lava, your forged weapons can survive, and they can give you some extra DR. So I like this innovation here. I think it's a pretty neat one to have. Next up for Paladin, another build that kind of stood out to me. I should say that overwhelmingly, Judgement was the build that we saw most commonly. This one kind of stands out, kind of a weird one, but it was still above 500 waves. So shout out to this person. When I say shout out to this person, I should backtrack. The 1,079 waves on softcore Judgement Paladin. This is from user gusi, Gusi. So shout out to them. This one, I don't know what this is. So this is a spell manifest armor build. All 3 of these Paladin builds are Merchant's Guild. This is manifest armor, spell damage, forge breath. It got buffed in like patch 1.0 or 1.1, somewhere around there it got buffed. But I never really saw anyone do anything with it. It's just kind of like been a meme that people mention from time to time. And I remember years ago, people also tried to do something with this, but like it was awkward for some reason. Listen, I don't play Manifest Armor, and I certainly don't play minion builds, but it's adorable to see people take something like this. Like, it's stock standard Manifest Armor, but what if we did spell damage instead of melee damage or bleed or something else? But if you want to try something like off the beaten path, this looks like a reasonable build. It's solo minion using inheritance once again, using our double rings, using a staff for our forged breath down here on the Manifest Armor skill tree. Beautiful. I love it. That's all I can say. And the last one here for Paladin was a Sierpin's crit Javelin build. So I actually expected to see a Javelin build, but I expected it to be Electrify because I've seen a lot of Electrify builds when I poke around like Discord and when I poke around twitch.tv. So I would expect people like take this node, or maybe at the very least take Spike Bombardment and also take Divine Fury. That's something that I would have expected to see as well. But this build stood out to me as like, it's Javelin. Javelin's buffed. We love Javelin, apparently. I don't, but other people do. And then it's just like Javelin, Fizz, Crit. So maybe I would expect to see this as a Forge Guard, perhaps, because like Forge Guard has good throwing nodes. But it's just straight up Paladin, taking advantage of one of the new Paladin nodes added, this Force of Devotion that I'm hovering over here, and then just being nice and tanky. So I like the looks of this. We have 42 Dexterity to go along with Sierpin's Fractal Tree, and then we do not have, wait, what is this? Fire, Necrotic, and Void Penetration. Why do we have Fire, Necrotic, Void Penetration? Why do we have this thing? I don't know. Wait, suddenly I feel like I'm missing something. Because I know that this is a physical crit build. T7 physical damage, crit multi. I don't... Don't hold me to this. Cheesing the evade? Are they just cheesing the evade? Maybe they are. Okay. Don't lock me in on that. I'm not sure. But then I wanted to mention that they're not using Red Ring here. So let's take a look real quick on Shield Throw. I want to see, are they using the cooldown stuff? Yeah, so they have Shield Throw on a 6-second cooldown, giving a bunch of armor, some haste, some health gain per dexterity, some armor shred, Colossus stacks. Grants you additional armor and additional physical penetration, each one. Plus 4 ricochets, frenzy duration as well. So cooldown Shield Throw along with crits Javelin, or Fizz crit Javelin. Okay, cool. I love it. All right, so that is our Paladin stuff. And for Paladin, there was no appreciable difference between the solo and the non-solo ladders, so nothing stands out there. Let's move on to our next one, which is Forge Guard. There's 4 Forge Guard builds we're going to look like. So the first 3 are like normal builds, and the last one is one that stood out as different in solo. So this very first Forge Guard build was 2,918 waves as, in the arena. And this is from user Greatmaster. The reason that this particular build stands out to me is that it's the exact same build as the Void Knight build. So we started out this video by talking about a Void Knight with 1,300 waves in the arena, and that was the rank 1 Void Knight. This is the exact same build, but instead of 1,300 waves, it's 2,900 waves. So maybe Forge Guard is a better place to be when it comes to Manifest Armor. Who knows? But everything here is the exact same. If you want to see a discussion of this, go rewind to the very first Void Knight build that we covered there. Next up is a touch more interesting. I kind of like this one. We were trying to figure out whether this particular build was a Manifest Armor build, or is this an actual factual Forged Weapon build? So Forged Weapons got buffed quite a bit in Season 2, in patch 1.2. They fixed the bug with these with Phantom Grip. In the past, in Season 1.1, there was a bug where Phantom Grip, instead of saying like the stats in your gloves and your Forged Weapons, or apply to your Forged Weapons at 82% effect, it took the stats from all of your gear instead of just your gloves. So they fixed that. And then they also buffed Forged Weapons, and they also bug fixed Forged Weapons. So they were supposed to be taking 50% less damage in general, but they weren't. So some of the complaints about Forged Weapon squishiness has been addressed in Season 2, and it's really cool to see people experimenting with them again. So Forged Weapons takes a copy of your weapon. So this Sierpin's Fractal Tree has a bunch of melee attack speed, some melee critical strike chance, and a huge melee crit multi as the implicit to this item too. So love to see that. Let's poke around the build for just a moment. Vengeance is generating the brunt of our Forged Weapons here. In Forge Strike is spec'd for just giving the Forged Weapons as much damage as possible. And maybe we're using this on cooldown as well, just to generate a bunch of them. Sometimes in the past, you would take Forge Strike and you grab no cooldown as well. So you could just like generate a bunch of them when you need them. But I see that they're not doing that here. So maybe Vengeance is summoning enough, and maybe just Forge Strike whenever it's on cooldown every 4 seconds. Manifest Armor is here because they have minion scaling, and why not just include it? So this is not a Manifest Armor build. I would definitely call this a Forged Weapon build instead. And then Healing Hands gets to heal your minions, gives them some ward as well with his Guardian Chant node. And then Symbols of Hope generates defense for you and offensive defense for your allies there. So again, with the Manifest Armor, we see the Manifest Armor Force of Impact plus Mantle of the Pale Ox, which to me tells me that they're very likely snapshotting their Manifest Armor. So that's something that you should keep an eye out for if you're looking to replicate this build. Next up This is our last non-solo Forge Guard build. This one's kind of cool. And while we were pulling this one up, it actually made someone in Twitch chat say like, hey, that's cool enough and interesting enough that I want to go play this build right now. So love seeing this kind of stuff, this kind of innovation. This is a Bleed Manifest Armor build. It is not a B build, believe it or not. But when you look at a unique item, well, it's got bees per 10 seconds in Spriggan form, which is useless. Bees, 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 bees. All of that text is completely useless, except the Blood Keeper's Nest unique item. On the very bottom, it says your minions leech 4% of physical damage as health, and your minions can't deal crits, which basically means that you can use this on any bleed minion build and just use it as kind of a stat stick, ignore all the text, and get it with like 2, 3, or maybe even 4 LP if you're playing a Merchant's Guild. So that's a neat thing to see there. The rest of this, like a whole bunch of bleed items. You can click through this if you'd like to on your own, but like it looks strange at first glance, but while I was poking through it, like I'm kind of picking up what this build is putting down. So Manifest Armor, you'll note that we have the more physical damage over time multiplicative node over here. So that's our bleed scaling. And then Force of Impact, I don't see this thing, but even if they were snapshotting, this doesn't really do anything for their bleed build anyways. So love to see the innovation and people trying to think outside the box. The last build here for Forge Guard, this is a solo character, and it's also a COF character. I think, yeah, so every Paladin build that we looked at was Merchant's Guild. I'm not doing a good job shouting it out, but I'm going to try to do better with it. So this is the only Forge Guard build that was COF, and it's also the only Forge Guard build that stands out as kind of different in the solo bracket. This is a build that I've seen some streamers messing with as well. It's a great build, and I'm actually really happy that this exists because I'm kind of low on Forge Guard in general. I don't love the current state of him. I love Paladin. I love VK. I think that Forge Guard still needs some extra love, particularly with the skills down here. So this node was bugged. This node was bugged for a while because it was giving double penalty, and so instead of having 20% less damage, you get 40% less damage. So this did get fixed like a week or two into the 1.2 patch. So nice to see that people can use this without feeling too awkward about it. So this is a build that shield bashes. We need a shield for our shieldy bash over here. But then we also get to use Event Horizon, which gives 150% more melee damage. It penalizes you by saying that you have less and less and less and less attack speed, but Shield Bash does not scale in attack speed. So you get to just attack, use that 150% more multiplier. But this particular build is a little bit slow because Event Horizon penalizes your attack speed, or sorry, penalizes your movement speed, and Forge Master's Might also penalizes your movement speed. So it's a little bit silly in that regard, but if you want damage, if you want to stun things, this thing will stun the bejesus out of stuff. So very cool to see that this build is even performing well in Arena 2. Next up, we're going to pivot to a third mastery. We're off of Sentinel at this point, and we're on to Marksman. And by Marksman, I mean rogue builds. So first up, we'll do Marksman, then we'll do Falconer, and then Bladedancer after that. These were all not particularly well represented. Like, they're all fairly unpopular. But Marksman was the most popular of the three. So for Marksman, the very highest tier here, not so competitive because people were too busy playing Void Knight and Marksman, but this is 645 waves in the arena, and this user is amhali, amhali, amhali. So shout out to them. This is I'm going to call this like Heartseeker Bow Mage. So Bow Mage, for those of you who've been playing this game for a couple of years, is a very popular build in the past, which was using Reign of Winter and using Morning Frost and scaling just as much dexterity as you possibly can, and then typically using it with like, with Flurry. Flurry just like have as many arrows go out as possible, and all those bow hits would proc your Reign of Winter as well. And then, Morning Frost scales the bow hits, and it scales the Reign of Winter. Sometimes people were using it with Detonating Arrow as well, because Detonating Arrow has like 3 different hits to it. So like that was an interesting way to go about the Bow Mage character. But Heartseeker seems to breathe new life into this whole Bow Mage archetype. So we're converting to our cold damage down here, so that all of our damage is cold. We have some recurve chance. I think Let's see, anything else stand out here? We have the puncture stuff as well, and then puncture spec for just like any more damage multiplier that's even relevant, and then having the Shadow Dagger node on the far right side. The Shadow Dagger node, we're not really attacking with puncture in this build, but you might as well take it because there's not much else to take, and in the chance that a monster gets hit with like 1 or 2 or 3 Shadow Daggers, they're going to take a big, juicy punch of damage because they're all fueled up by our Morning Frost, giving us 2 damage per 1 point of dexterity on those. And then, of course, they have like super high effectiveness of added damage. So it's a cool place to be for Marksman. Love to see people using Pearls of the Swine. Just an amazing amulet here. This particular build, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. We kind of scratch our heads about it. But this person has all res while channeling on their Usanori Sphere. And they also have damage while channeling on their Pearls of the Swine. So maybe they were repurposing this from a different character. Maybe they whiffed a LP slam and it didn't quite get exactly what they wanted. But I don't think there's any channeling in this build. I just see this as something that happens to be included. So this build was 645 waves. Let's move on to another one here. For Marksman, this build was overwhelmingly the only thing that people were using in the arena. So cool. In the solo ladder, on the other hand, there was one person doing one thing that was a bit different. And it even stands out because instead of 645, this person had 732 waves in the arena. So they were solo. They were the only person playing this build. They beat out the non-solo gamers. And what's more is this is Tunk. So Tunk makes Tunk Labs. You might be using that as another tool to investigate things in Last Epoch's backend. But Tunk has been playing Hail of Arrows longer than I have been playing Last Epoch. This guy found the build that he loves, and he literally only plays this. So Hail of Arrows is alive and well. There's lots of popular versions of it. There's versions that use the Ravager's Dart helmet to automate Heartseeker, to get these extra nodes up here, to get just a little bit of bonus duration. And a bonus duration, of course, gives you more damage and better uptime of your good damage off the Nowhere to Hide node in Hail of Arrows skill tree. What stands out to me about this is that they're using the Crystal Wind quiver here. There's other options for quivers that you can use instead, but Crystal Wind has this gain 4 stacks of Crystal Wind, directly using a bow attack, consumes up to 4 stacks, and deals 12% more damage per stack. So Crystal Wind, this new quiver that was introduced in patch 1.2, really incentivizes you to have like one big hit, and have that hit have as much duration as possible. So we have this combo-rific playstyle of generating a whole bunch of shadows off of Smoke Bomb, and maybe shadows off of not Dark Quiver. Nope, not off of this, just kidding. So generating shadows off of Smoke Bomb, and then on shift, we will have 20% more damage and 30% more damage off of these nodes. And then we'll have 48% more damage off of Crystal Wind because we're only really using one singular Hail of Arrows, and then we just stand around for a bit. So if that's not the playstyle that you like, don't play this build. There's other ways of playing it. You can play the bleed version as well. Very popular. People have been liking that. There's even just like non-combo versions of Hail of Arrows. But the fact that Tunk has been playing this build for longer than I've been alive is just like so funny because he's also doing very well on the ladder. So shout out to him. After Marksman, we're going to go on to the next rogue mastery, and that is Falconer. Falconer has 2 builds that we'll be talking about here. These are actually both COF builds, believe it or not. So the first one is user Abomination. They did the best on the solo ladder, or sorry, I guess like non-solo ladder, but the best in the Falconer ladder. They did 802 waves, playing a low-life Ballista build, compiling all this character in COF. So I don't know what their survivability looks like. Don't ask me, but they have no ward retention over here on their idols, just as much damage as possible. They're using Morning Frost to juice up all their damage. They're using Exsanguinous because, listen, don't ask me why they're using Exsanguinous, but just juicing as much possible damage as they can. So Falconer is here for utility. It's going to deal a bit of damage as well. It's like ambient damage plus the Falcon Strikes, but the real belle of the ball is the Ballista here. What stands out to me is that they're fully spec'd into the potion drop, and then on the belt, you'll see that they have ward gained on potion use, and then they have mana gain on potion use, mana regeneration on potion use, potion converted to ward as well. So I kind of spec'd into having their defenses based off of ward, especially with the Exsanguinous thing here, especially with like they have 78 cold res, a tiny bit of ward retention scaling per cold res stuff here with the Frostbite Shackles. but just having a little bit of something. So that is the build that they put together here, and this is also the most popular Falconer build that we saw. This like ballista thing. A little bit of Umbral Blades, not spec'd into Shadow Daggers. A little bit of Umbral Blades procced off of Aerial Assault as well. So good. Love to see that. Oh, I guess I forgot about this node down here. Why are they using Exsanguinous? Convert the health gain from Healing Gust into Ward at half effect. So all the nodes here converted to Ward instead. There you go. There's your rationale for using Exsanguinous. I love that. Let's take a look at one more Falconer build while we continue. The other Falconer build that got a lot of popularity was this build is certainly more popular outside of Arena. The Ballista build is pretty popular in Arena, but this one's pretty popular outside of it. I would call this Falconer build the stock standard dive bomb Umbral Blades Falconer. So we're not going to use a dagger to apply shadow daggers off of Umbral Blades, because we certainly want to be using the bow that has 17 lines of text that all apply to juicing up our Falcon damage. So this is a Falcon Dive Bomb Shadow Falcon node or build here. This is a tremendous amount of damage. I don't know if this has been bug fixed, but Shadow Falcons currently apply like their full damage instead of applying 70% less damage. Yeah, like the minus 70% damage, like not applying. So we've seen people using Dive Bomb just like do a tremendous amount of damage to like Uber Aberoth, the new boss for the patch. But yeah, so there's... The build should be worse. It's probably still going to be good because Falconer, like the whole of Falconer's mastery is just like completely insane. But someone took their Dive Bomb kind of stock standard boss killing or farming build into Arena, and they did pretty well with it there. This was fixed. God bless. Okay, so that Shadow Falcon stuff is fixed. Whew. Maybe Falconer can be fixed too someday. What does that mean? It means I don't like Falconer. Don't look at me. All right, so we're going to look at one more mastery for Rogue, and that is Bladedancer. The notable thing about Bladedancer here is that Bladedancer, along with two other masteries that we'll get to later, were the least popular and had the least competition in Arena. So this build was 477 waves, which is under our 500 threshold for like looking at planners, but I wanted to feature something for what's going on in the world of Bladedancer right now. So this is a 477 waves in softcore. Username is Emeralds with 2 Z's at the end. And this is a Smoke Weaver plus Trader's Tongue. Love the fact that they're using Pearls of the Swine. Just an amazing amulet. Couldn't be happier that people are using it. We again see people using Elico's Invocation. So like maybe there's an argument to be using something like, I don't know, what could you use? You could use like the Intelligence Belt to get like better ward retention or something, but really just going all in on damage here. Like we have the ward gain on potion use, we have crit chance, we have crit multi, and I'm pretty sure this is the only belt in the game that has crit multi on it. So pretty cool to see like sneaking this belt into more builds. It's also fairly easy to farm one of these with, oh no, I'm thinking about the other one. I'm thinking about the Smite belt. The Smite belt's super easy to farm with LP. I'm actually not sure how easy it is to farm with this one with LP. In any case, we are low life. We have a tiny bit of ward retention. Let's take a look at their planning real quick. We have 0 points, Monka. We have 0 points in Argent Veil to generate Silver Shrouds. That surprises me. This node's really good, especially for 1 point. Huh. All right, well, I was sure that I was going to talk about this node as a focal point for being like low life. But at the very least, we do have all these points into a crit multi and low health. This used to be critical strike chance while at low health and less damage taken while at low health, which kind of incentivizes you to be an Exsanguinous or like a low life character. The change from being flat crit to being crit multi instead, it stops enabling some builds that really wanted that flat critical strike chance. But on the other hand, it does help you scale your things that always have 100% crit chance, like Shadow Daggers. So that's a pretty cool thing to see here. It's like a tiny little change from like 1.0 or 1.1 that kind of bolsters builds want to go low life and skill Shadow Daggers. So briefly hovering over the skills, we have daggers, we have Umbral Blades applying Shadow Daggers for us as well. We have Shift proccing our Shadow Cascade spec'd into more Shadow Daggers there, and then Smoke Bomb just generating more shadows so that when we do Sync Strike, we can throw as many Umbral Blades as we possibly can. We also have ward gain on Shadow Creation, so that's a good one to see. I just looked at the Sync Strike and I looked at the Smoke Bomb. So I'm trying to give like some good screen time to Bladedancer because there's only one Bladedancer build to look at. But ward gain on Shadow Creation, this is a reasonable form of defense as well. Ward gain on Shadow Creation, tier 5, tier 6, and then a couple points into, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Oh, that's health gain on Shadow Creation. Just kidding. Oops. I wonder if this should be, maybe they should add it. Should they add? All right, let's go make a poll. Should this node also have ward gain and shadow creation? I don't know, maybe it should. But there you go. There's your Bladedancer build. There's only one. Next up, we're gonna look at a new mastery, or sorry, a new starting class. So we're gonna move on to Acolyte. In the world of Acolyte, we're gonna talk about Necromancer first. Necromancer is definitely the most popular of these. Warlock was not particularly competitive. It kind of surprised me that Warlock was not very competitive. And then Lich was once again competitive. So Lich will be a fun thing to talk about when we get there. In the world of Necromancer, we have two builds, and one of them is more popular. The Abomination build that people have been using fully takes advantage of snapshotting, because why would you not? So this is user Yan Yan, who pushed 1,128 waves in the arena. So shout out to them. This is a, let's see, what can we say about it? I don't know what there is to say about it. I've never played Abomination. It's an abomination to play, I know that much. But we have, Dreadshade was changed. Minion rooted, that's kind of funny. Dreadshade was changed to have infinite duration. It used to have a duration, like you'd have to like resummon the Dreadshade itself. So extra quality of life there, which is cute. We have Summon Wraith to fuel the Dreadshade, or sorry, to fuel the, wait, where is it? Oh god, do they spec out of it? Infernal Shade. Transplant. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong build. Oh, I'm like, what am I doing? Okay, so I was talking about one build. I was showing the wrong build on the screen. I apologize. I've never done this before. This is the A-bomb build. Holy. Okay, so in A-bomb here, we have our Summon Skeleton, our Summon Skeletal Mage, and a bunch of minions that will summon on the ground, including an Abomination. And then we'll summon the Abomination and get as much damage on it as possible. So Dreadshade is infinite. It no longer has a duration on it. And then we can slap an Infernal Shade on it as well. So that's that build. This person's gear, presumably they're moving their gear around, like they're snapshotting, unsnapshotting. So this is the gear that I can look at here. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I wanted to share it with you anyways. Moving on to the other one that I've already showed 1 second ago. This is the other build. So I guess just for the sake of consistency, like this was the 1,128 waves. This was Yan Yan's build, the highest Necromancer build. This one, on the other hand, seems to be less popular. This is the Wraithlord build. The Wraithlord build does not get to take advantage well of the new Inheritance Amulet, the one that targets one particular minion. Yeah, the Inheritance of the Erased every 10 seconds gives them buffs. So it does not get to take advantage of that. So instead, we're using a Death Rattle here. But Wraithlord, for as long as it's been around, I'm pretty sure that it hasn't really changed much. Mantle of the Pale Ox, again, is like one of the strongest items that's been introduced in this current patch, because it gives you so much defense for your own character here. I don't think there's much that stands out. Definitely uses snapshotting. Why wouldn't you? That's like what A-bomb is all about. But you can view, or sorry, that's what Wraithlord stuff is all about as well. So is it, I say that so flippantly. I'm pretty sure it is. Can you snapshot Wraithlord? You definitely snapshot A-bomb. Instead of waiting for Twitch chat to clarify whether you can snapshot Wraithlord, we're just going to continue, okay? Let's move on to the next Acolyte Mastery here. We're going to look at a Warlock build. There's only one Warlock build that we're going to be looking at here. This is a COF gamer at 262 waves. This was user Kaya, K-A-E-A. So we can tell like this character is like kind of low level. What really stands out is the use of Runestone here instead of looking at something else instead. You're 90% sure that you can snapshot Wraithlord? Got it. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So we see like a handful of, low level items like tier 6 modifiers instead of tier 7 modifiers. But this is the kind of thing that people are thinking about when they're going into their arena builds. So this is stacking a bunch of necrotic resistance. And then we have just like kind of normal looking, it's post nerf, but it's still good. Chthonic Fissure plus Torment. The kinds of, there is a build for Warlock that I'm surprised that I don't see here. There's a new relic that allows you to scale Witchfire. Let's see if we can pull it up real quick. Witchfire, Downfall of the Righteous. I didn't find anyone who is playing on the arena ladder who is trying to use one of these. I don't know how it performs in arena, But like, if you'd ask me like, what does Warlock builds look like outside of Arena, like the rest of Last Epoch, I would assume that this, the Witchfire Relic is like the most popular thing that's going on. It's good and it's new and flashy. So that's like a good combination for people wanting to mess around with it. So this is what's going on with Warlock here at 262 waves. Moving on from that, we have the third of the three masteries for Acolyte, and this is Lich. So we have 2 builds plus 1 solo build that we'll be looking at here. This first Lich build is the highest in the arena. It's 893 waves from user Estheon. Estheon. So this is a Stygian Coal build. Lich has not been changed much over the past 1,000 years. It's basically remained unchanged, and it's still strong, but the people who have played it, and they'd like to try out other things instead. One of the very few like new-ish things going on in the world of Lich is Stygian Coal. So when Warlock was released, we got access to like Poison Overload and Bleed Overload. So there's a couple Overload builds or like Ailment builds that get to make use of those. But you can also just play crit. So this user is playing a crit Stygian Coal build using a Mad Alchemist Ladle. It does make me wonder the prevalence with which I've seen Mad Alchemist Ladle replaced in builds using a, what's it called? The Wrong Warp instead. I do wonder whether Wrong Warp would be better, but this person's at 893 waves in the arena with 4,000 life and double red rings. Like, I have to assume that they've thought about this. Surely they have justification for this, and it's probably better. So I would defer to this build in choosing between those two unique wands. So a shout out to this person for getting that far. The next Lich build that we're going to take a look at is loading up here. This Lich build is a Infernal Shade build. So the first build was COF. COF at the top of the ladder for Lich. COF. This next one is a Merchant's Guild build using Infernal Shade. So Infernal Shade got some hype at the beginning of this patch because it got some buffs in terms of damage, I believe. So taking all these explosion nodes on the very far left side of the skill tree, using it for damage. Volatile Zombies, using it for, it looks like health generation down here. No, what is it being used for? Oh, sorry, cast Infernal Shade on death. Okay, gotcha. Summon your Volatile Zombies. When they die, they turn into Infernal Shades, and your Infernal Shades go boom. I see Aura of Decay here. Aura of Decay is something that you can snapshot. I don't know if they did snapshot it, so I can't speak to that. And then Death Seal Reperform looks like pretty stock standard stuff here, so nothing too much to say there. Mantle of the Pale Ox. I could poke around their mastery a little bit to see if anything is like generating extra skeletons, for example. So yeah, Harvested Legions. We're summoning zombies. We're summoning skeletons. These things are going to be there. And even though we're trying to blow them up as well, they still give us some extra defense off of Mantle. So love seeing this item pop up. Super strong item. I'm kind of surprised how strong it is. Is it going to get nerfed? Is it? Maybe, perhaps. So there. Maybe. All right. So EHG, just tune out. Don't watch this video anymore. But man, it's a really strong chess piece, isn't it? Moving on to our last Lich build. There's one Lich build that really stood out as the solo ladder. And this, of course, is from Mao Mao X. If you've been around Last Epoch for a while, you know that Mao Mao streams periodically, makes some YouTube content periodically, and he's a friend of the channel here. So he's been playing Lich for as long as Last Epoch has existed. He plays an awful lot of this one particular build. He tells me that he got sick of using a Stygian Coal. He didn't want to hear that sound effect going on anymore in his brain, and he wanted to try doing something else instead. So this is the, I think it's the best performing non... Oh, man, you know what? If I'm going to say those words, I might as well look it up. Let's go look it up real quick. Ladders, solo... Where's my Lich? Ladder solo Lich. Not the best performing. So, all right, Amon waiting for patch 1.3, Mao waiting for patch 1.3. Cool, love that. All right, so Mao is like doing, Amon is doing a very similar thing using Stygian Coal, but Mao wanted to try something else instead. It's funny because I know both of them, and like they're both friends of the channel who make content periodically. So this build, without further ado, is a Lich build that notably does not use Death Seal, which is a huge divergence from now how you would normally expect people to be playing a Lich. Basically, if you're not using Death Seal, you have to have a very good reason for it. Sometimes, like during patch 1.0, for example, when like Ward was kind of out of control, people just went low life and they just had, 10, 20, 30,000 Ward. And that was a pretty good excuse not to be using Death Seal, even though Death Seal is a crazy powerful skill. So if you have a good reason not to use Death Seal, you can like not use Death Seal. This particular build does spec Reaper Form, does spec Bone Curse. We have Bone Curse shenanigans going on down here. So we're specking into the Bone Prison Wall. The Bone Prison Wall summons a bunch of minions. It's a wall, but they're minions, so you can sacrifice them. Like with this skill called Sacrifice. So we're Bone Curse, making a bunch of minions on the ground. We are sacrificing them, but we're also taking this Flickering Shadows node down here. And this node in Sacrifice is kind of the point of the build. If you cast Sacrifice while you have at least one minion, all of your active Infernal Shades have their remaining duration reduced to 2, but they deal significantly more damage. So we have a Infernal Shade not exploding. This is not an exploding Infernal Shade build. Just dealing a whole bunch of DPS, fire spell damage over time, juiced up by the Flickering Shadows node here. So a lot of cool technology here. Innovation in a place where I can't imagine that there's still innovation. But in patch 1.3, for those of you out of the loop, it will be a Necromancer plus Lich patch. So if you like minions, if you like Necros, or even if you like Lich and you want to see something new finally added to the game, 1.3 Season 3 will be for you. So that is the end of the Acolyte builds. Let's take a look next at Primalist. Let's pull up these here. First up for Primalist, we have 2 builds we're going to look at. One of them is, I guess they're both Merchant's Guild, which is neat. The Shaman build that we're looking at here is the rank 1 overall. So this is 3,208 waves in the arena. Very, very cool. This is a build that's been proven in the past, but there is a tiny bit of technology, and there are some things that have changed in patch 1.2 that I want to mention briefly. So you'll see that they don't have much HP. They have 1,200 life. You'll see that they have 40 mana regeneration, which should clue you onto something. One of the strongest things that you can do across any Primalist right now, and you're going to see this as we talk about the other Primalist builds, is like this Tornado plus Gathering Storm interaction. So in the past, Tornado has procced Lightning Bolts. In the present, Tornado procs Gathering Storm. So Storm Bolt is a sub-skill of Gathering Storm, and if you spec your Gathering Storm skill tree to deal a bunch of damage, lo and behold, your Tornado Lightning proc Storm Bolts will deal more damage as well. What really stood out to me about this character, so for those of you not in the know, we're going to stand in one place, we're going to hold down right click and spam like a whole bunch of tornadoes all around the screen, lots of clutter, and have like really, really high coverage of every monster in the arena. So that's kind of what's going on here. It's like spamming tornadoes. What stands out to me is that this build is not scaling lightning damage. And we have 179 attunement. Holy moly, that's a lot. So this matters. Like this node is sitting right here waiting for us. It says you and your minions have additional spell lightning penetration per 5 points of attunement. So two per 5. This is a tremendous amount of lightning penetration that we have access to that we've opted not to take. So if you were playing like a bossing build, maybe you would pivot this and be a lightning damage version instead. But in the world of Arena, you care more about survivability. You care more about CCing monsters, controlling them and stunning them and freezing them. So we have Gathering Storm spec'd into cold damage. We have 2 little cheeky points into freeze rate just to get all the way over here to the right. So winter comes. It gives us freeze rate multiplier per 2 attunement. And then it also gives us a little bit of frostbite penetration. But the frostbite penetration, not that important because we are scaling a lot of crit multi. We are trying to deal critical spell damage. But frostbite, of course, gives us a way to lower the enemy's resistance to freeze. I forget exactly what the word is, but if you apply a bunch of frostbites, it makes it easier for you to actually freeze the enemies. This, allowing us to scale attunement, which gives us flat damage on Gathering Storm, which also gives us mana regeneration, which also gives us better freeze rate multi for our skill, kind of gives us like incidental freezes that we're incidentally speccing into and buffing up while, like, we're not like specifically building, you know, just freeze rate multi, for example. But lo and behold, we even have a little bit of freeze rate multi on our Soulfire here. So we have more spell damage to ignited enemies. We have some ignite somewhere in the build, and just a tiny bit of ignite gives us that more multiplier there. We have Hand of Judgment, only specifically used for the attunement roll, ignoring all the other text on this. Attunement here, attunement there, bunch of crit multi. And Urzel's Pride stands out to me as something that's been buffed in Season 2 for patch 1.2. In the past, this was 1 mana regen. Sorry, it was a 1 per... Was it 1, 2? Was it 1 to 1? 1 per 1? It was like 1.4 or something. So this I think it was 1% increased mana regeneration per 4 uncapped lightning res. I think it's something like that. But Urzel's Pride is better these days at generating mana regeneration. So love to see that being featured here. Like, we don't need that much defense. We just need coverage, mana regeneration, a tiny bit of freeze to slow the enemies down, and we can just like kill those enemies before they can even touch us. It was one. Okay, thank you. Twitch chat's helping me. It was 1 per 3 in the past, and now it's 1 per 2. Got it. So a little bit better mana regeneration there. The other, so yeah, by the way, for Shaman, this is like easily far and away the most popular build. We had to like dig to find a different Shaman build that people were playing, but there was another one that was being featured above 500 waves in the arena. So I want to call this up real quick. It's a different Merchants Guild Shaman build, and this one instead doing a Storm Totem character. So I had to ask a couple of people who were watching live while we were digging through all the data, figuring out how this build works. But this is a build that stays in Spriggan form, summons a whole bunch of Thorn Totems, and then, while you're in form, just makes use of Stormcarved Testament. It does have an 8-second cooldown on that second to last line of text, 12% chance to summon a Storm Totem on hit. So it does have an 8-second cooldown, but if you can make it work and like summon a bunch of Thorn Totems have some damage. They're going to be killing monsters as well. But you have a Storm Totem as well that's giga juiced up with Thunder Totem in the bottom middle of the skill tree. So it says, if you have at least 3 other totems when you summon a Storm Totem, up to 5 are consumed to give it more damage, health, and size per totem consumed this way. So 20% more per totem that you consume. And we're going to be summoning a whole bunch of Thorn Totems. So maximum totems here and plus maximum totems over here as well. So that is a cool way to stay in form. Again, we're making use of Mantle of the Pale Ox. It's so good because we're summoning our totems over and over, and we're always going to have something to redirect damage to. So yeah, very neat build. Love to see that this is something else people are experimenting with instead of just the Tornado Gathering Storm thing there. Let's move on to another one. In Primalist, we have Beastmaster next. I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but for each class that we're doing, we're going from like most popular to least popular. So Shaman was the most popular representation in Arena, Beastmaster next, and of course that means Druid's going to come after that. So in Beastmaster, the highest waves we found were 893 waves. This was user WGWG, and this is a solo Scorpion build in Merchants Guild. So I think this is stock standard. Wait. Oh, looking at the wrong one. There we go. Ta-da! I've done this before. I keep clicking on the second tab instead of the first tab. This is the highest build, 893 waves from user WGWG, solo Scorpion Merchants Guild. A couple things to shout out here, which may look funny or interesting. We're dual wielding shields, so love to be super tanky. We have our Inheritance of the Erased, which again really stands out from patch 1.2. This got added to the game, and it really incentivizes you having like a solo companion build or just one minion that you're juicing up instead of a bunch of small ones. The Ravager's Dart helmet stands out to me. I think Ravager's Dart is there to apply ailments, which is weird. So like we have this thing down here, 28% chance on hit to grant one of your minions Aspect of the Spider, and like it doesn't stack. Okay, so it's kind of a weird helmet. I was scratching my helmet. Oh my god, I can't believe I said that. I was scratching my head trying to figure out why Ravager's Dart was here. I think it's to make Dedication of the Erased, like the Aspect of the Spider down there, more consistent. And I also think it's to... There's something else that's like consistency as well, right? Because like this is not on cooldown, so we don't need that. So we can swipe for health on melee hits, damage taken on block, frailty. I think it's frailty as well. Yeah, it's a head scratcher. Like maybe there's a different helmet that you could use instead, but it's adorable. Like thinking about using Ravager's Dart, like all of a sudden I'm thinking about this in like my own builds. Is there a build that I have that I wish could just hit a little bit more often? For example, I know that there are builds in the past that like have like one big Erasing Strike. Like, bear with me for a moment. There's an Erasing Strike build right now that, I guess like the meta one just like has no cooldown and just goes bonk, 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 bonk. In the past, there's been different Erasing Strike builds that kind of juice up and like kind of enter the Konami code and have one big Erasing Strike that deals like 30 million damage to the dummy, for example. So in a build like that, it might be interesting to have a helmet that has a random proc associated with it that kind of like, keeps ticking. And then you could have things like armor shred or frailty or chill or slow to like kind of keep the enemies at bay while you're lining up like your perfect like amount of damage, like your perfect combo before you hit your one big shot. So this is a cool helmet to think about outside of just being a rogue helmet there. So super neat there. That was our, let's see, this is a Beastmaster. Yeah. Solo Scorpion. Good looking stuff here. The other Beastmaster build that I want to shout out here. First of all, I assume that every minion build is snapshot. So surely this is snapshot as well. The other one gets a huge shout out for snapshotting because this is a Beastmaster Stormcrow build in Merchant's Guild. What we know about from EHG when they're showing us data about the kinds of people and the kinds of builds have been taking down Uber Aberoth, there were a lot of Beastmasters who've been taking down Uber Aberoth, and there's been some publicity on social media and on Twitch.tv as well about people just like snapshotting their Stormcrows and having gazoonga damage and just like really tearing Uber Aberoth apart without much of a hassle. So yeah, if Stormcrows deal a ton of damage, and the issue with Stormcrows has always been that they're kind of squishy, but if you can just have 2 sets of gear, you kind of fix that issue, don't you? So this is undoubtedly a snapshot Stormcrow build. We're using Tempest Strike with this Scheme of the Architect up here, juicing up their damage, and then Swipe on cooldown, giving us more access to the active ability from Stormcrows. Maelstrom and Warcry just kind of tie the room together there. So yeah, super strong build. It wasn't the highest. My boy Scorpion got the most waves in the arena, but Stormcrows also showing a strong performance in the arena as well. Next up, the last of the 3 Druid masteries. The last of the 3 Primos masteries will be Druid. And there's one Druid build that I'll be showing to you today. This is 1357. So 1,357 waves in the arena from user Arimind. Arimind, something like that. All right, so shout out to them. 1,357 waves. This is a COF character, which is neat as well. Before we dig into this character, I do want to say that Bladedancer was one of the 3 least popular masteries on the arena ladders. So Bladedancer, Druid is the second one. There are not a lot of Druid gamers out there, specifically in the arena, but probably outside of the arena as well. Not much change with Druid, so there's not a lot of people who are exploring it. This build, on the other hand, is something that I would call like one of the strongest builds of the previous patch in patch 1.1, and it's just better in 1.2. So it's not necessarily new. If you're sick of it, you wouldn't play it again. If you're like a new player coming back every year or so, this isn't something that would be on your radar. But this is Tornado Bear. So we said at the beginning with Shaman that one of the strongest things going on in all of Primalist right now is this interaction of Tornado plus Gathering Storm. So once again, we have Tornado plus Gathering Storm. In Werebear form, we have 1 spell damage per strength. And then we have 60 strength here, 103 attunement. Attunement is giving us flat spell damage in Gathering Storm as well. And then, let's see, what else happens? Yeah. Double the damage on Maelstrom as well. Sure. Let's see, what else are we getting from our attunement stacking? Over here, of course, you and your minions have additional spell lightning penetration per 5 points of attunement. So we are stacking attunement, and even using this, we have crit avoidance per 5 attunement there. So some people periodically talk about like, how do I decide between going crit avoidance or do I go like fortify and like the reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes instead? And like in a vacuum, reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes is better, because it's instead of being binary, it's non-binary. It is like it's scalar. Like if you have 99% of it, it's still very, very good. But if you have 99% of chance to avoid, you might still get crit, for example. But this build, stacking attunement, we already have a lot of access to reduced bonus damage taken, a lot of access to crit avoidance. So getting a crit avoidance blessing here is a nice way to round out our crit defense. So this is an example of that kind of decision making. Not too much new stuff going on in this patch. There's 2 new items that I see here. Grasp with the Blood Mage is sweet. It gives us spell critical strike chance. Very cool. Also gives us spell damage and leeches health. Always want more access to that. And then the Brewmaster's Buckle. I love this thing. Man, it's got so many cool interactions. But this is maximum health gained as endurance threshold when you use a potion. And yes, it stacks. So if you have a way of generating a bunch of potions, maybe you should consider having this kind of thing as well, because having your entire life bar covered by endurance is a hell of a place to be for defense. Urzel's Pride is another. It used to be 1/3 uncapped lightning resistance, so this is better at generating mana for us now. But while we're in werebear form, we're not really going to care about that. So this build, if you haven't seen it, it's going to spam a whole bunch of tornadoes in human form. It's going to transform into a werebear, and it's going to run and rampage. So while we are rampaging, we get 20% more lightning damage. So this helps us not only with mobility, but it helps us get some extra bonus damage. So because of the way that Tornado makes a new Gathering Storm Stormbolt, while you're rampaging, that one has 20% more damage on it. So pretty strong build right there. Love to see that. Next up, we're going to take a look at the last of the 5 starting classes. And can you believe that the most popular mage mastery is Spellblade? I did not expect that. So Spellblade was not particularly competitive, but it was the most popular of the 3 mage starting classes when it comes to arena. So the build that we're showcasing here, this is from user Waymin. User Waymin had the highest waves at 300. But they didn't have any gear on their character. So I grabbed a different planner instead. The only difference is I know that Waymin was using a, an Eye of Reen in their Shatter Strike build, instead of this user who opted into double Scissor of Atropos instead. So this is the kind of build people are using in Spellblade. It also looked to be like definitely the most popular Spellblade build that people were trying to build. So this is a crit Shatter Strike build. What's interesting to me is like Scissor is a new item. It is a royal pain, in my humble opinion, to farm up a good version of this. But if you're playing Merchant's Guild, you can just buy it. So I don't know, Merchant's Guild's pretty good. So Scissor is a crazy strong item and has a very good base attack rate of 1.2. And then it has plus levels to melee skills, which really stands out because melee skills tend to have some pretty good nodes you can spec into. A lot of good, like more multipliers or quality of life or bigger AoE for that example. Shatter Strike also makes very good use of having plus levels to skills. So much so that we have +2 on our Wings of Argentus with no defensive modifiers. We have Scissor with +2 again, +2 again. And then I think Shatter Strike is on. Yeah, Shatter Strike is on the body armor, +4 levels there. And then 2 more on Nihilist, just an awful lot of plus levels to our skills. So, I don't know if it's like exactly stock standard because I haven't looked at Shatter Strike in a while, but I do know that the meta way of playing playing Shatter Strike is with Diathaean's Bloody Nib. So it puts a lot of bleed stacks on you, but the payoff is having an astronomical amount of damage. So that's kind of what I expect this build to be. Like, not a lot of defense, kind of just wants to be in the thick of it, wants to be hitting as many enemies as possible, wants to have just barely enough defense to stand there, hold down right click, and generate just a tiny bit of ward, and have huge damage to like kill everything before it can kill you. So this is the kind of thing people are trying as Spellblades right now. After that, we have the second most popular Mage Mastery, and we have one build to showcase here. I was struggling for like, what do I call this Runemaster build? And like, listen, I come from the world of Magic the Gathering a long time ago, and like a deck attribution or build attribution, I feel like to call this like John's build or Jimmy's build or Sally's build, like this person really needs to be closely tied to a build for me to have any interest in calling it like Joe Schmo's build. Because in the most part, in an action RPG, we have like, here's Shatter Strike, and we're going to scale crit multi. And if you put them together, you have a crit Shatter Strike build. Like, we're kind of just playing with Legos, and a lot of those Lego pieces are predetermined by EHG when they add them into the game. This one is just slightly out of the box, and it's out of the box enough, and there's enough popularity around Frozen Sentinel that I'm happy to call this Frozen Sentinel's build. This user here got 1,098 waves in the arena. This user is Jess Rabbit. Twitch chat tells me that Jess Rabbit is a content creator as well. Maybe they stream periodically too. So if you don't want to call this the Frozen Sentinel T-Pose build, you could instead call this a Brand of Deception mana guide character. So what's going on here, it's enabled primarily by the new set crafting that's been added to the game. So the tier 7 version of the Velatria Helmet Affix says 1% shock chance per intelligence, which by itself is not OP, except for the fact that down here with Branded Deception, it stacks one time, it puts one big damage over time on the enemy, and it deals 1% more damage per shock chance. So we can once again just be a super tanky character by building a bunch of strength, turning that into armor, and then with Cleaver Solution, turn that into our intelligence, or sorry, turn that into intelligence, turning it into shock chance, which becomes more damage on Brand of Deception. So this character is interesting because it also gets to use a fundamental criterion. I think this build uses Plasma Orb as its runic invocation. If Twitch chat wants to clarify that for me, you can. But I think it's a Plasma Orb build. I'm not actually sure. It actually is. Plasma Orb is a dexterity stacking thing, isn't it? Okay, well, I'm going to keep yapping, but if someone wants to clarify for me which runic invocation they end up using, that'd be happy as well. So, there is a tiny bit of shenanigans that goes along with Frostwall. So this build doesn't snapshot a minion, but you get to snapshot your aspirant's arrival right here. So putting out a Frostwall, waiting for a couple seconds, and then walking through the Frostwall will snapshot some of your damage. They use Plasma Orb for clear, and they use Covenant Arc for bosses. Okay, thank you, Twitch chat. Appreciate you. Of course, because we have so much strength, we can use a Bastion for maximum block chance. Double red rings because we are interested in stats, and also we already have so many stats. Yeah, just like a super strong build. Love to see this kind of thing. Mana Guide stands out to me as, you know, so we have the Brand of Deception from the shock chance scaling on the helmets. So like a really good example of set crafting being relevant for strong endgame builds. But this Mana Guide amulet is also brand new. So I've been using this on a couple characters just to get mana regeneration. It goes up to 70 mana regen, and then you can LP more mana regen onto it. So you could just use this on some kind of Shaman build that wants as much mana regen as possible. For this particular Runemaster build, and then for some Sorc builds that I've seen as well, they use Mana Guide for the purpose that's written on it. So they channel Focus. Focus gives you some very relevant defensive nodes as well, and then like less damage taken from chilled enemies, and then some extra procs, and it will also proc some Lightning Blast for you. So they just like, they T-pose around, they channel Focus, and while you're focusing, you can still move at the same time. So that is a pretty cool use of like the new items added to the game. And with a patch in 1.2 where Runemaster really didn't change much, having this and having like the set affix there, like these two things were new, and that's why the build exists, and it's why it's so interesting. So I love seeing a bunch of moving pieces like this. So this was a COF Gamer, Jess Rabbit, 1098 waves, and it's also the only Runemaster build that really stands out here. Last, we have one more mastery here. Tied for Druid and Bladedancer, we have Sorc. So those were all three the least popular, they had the least representation in all of the arena builds that people were putting together. So this, not particularly competitive once again, this character was 505 waves in the arena. So over the 500 threshold, shout out to them. This user was Griffin, and they were playing a Mana Guide Lightning Blast character. So this is not using Brand of Deception, of course, because Brand of Deception is a Runemaster only thing. But as far as I can tell with this character, they're using Mana Guide, and they're just like using Focus itself and like the Lightning proc and Focus to deal some damage. And it's going to proc Lightning Blast. They're spec'd into Lightning Blast with some extra single target stuff down here. Some extra Halo effect, which just got changed to scale with the rest of the tree, like it did in the past. I'm kind of surprised not to see Shattershock here. I know that Shattershock is a super strong node because it's two separate more multipliers in the same node. So I wonder if you could like work that in there somehow. But we do have Spark Charges here. That surprises me because we don't have a Spark Charge offhand. Curious to see that there. I would like to innovate with this perhaps. But then Static, of course, got changed in patch 1.2. It is a bit better for proccing Lightning Blast, and it will have a chance for +4 chains. So that's really cool. I wonder if on our belt we do. Hooray! New stuff. So champion affixes are not widely used, and I wouldn't say they fall flat, but they're really hard to incorporate into a build. Some of the champion affixes that were introduced in 1.2 are like a bit niche. Some of them are on weird base types. And of course, farming up a good version of a good one is very difficult because you can't craft with it. It's always sealed. So if it drops on a belt, but it's a bad belt base type, your endgame character still might not want to use it. So for this one here, we have a chance for Lightning Blast to chain 4 additional times, which is a very strong line of text. Love to see that. And for them, it dropped on a Praetorian belt, which is a great endgame body, or a great endgame belt, which rolls up to 250 flat armor as that implicit there. So they got mana regen, lightning damage, health, crit reduction. Yeah, love to see that kind of thing here. The last thing that stands out for me about this particular character is they're using a Fractured Crown. So that's a really interesting thing to me. I'm going to check their mastery real quick. There's damage dealt to mana. Yeah, there we go. Runic or mana bulwark. Damage dealt to mana before health. And like, if we're using focus and we're always channeling focus, like we have reduced benefit of mana regeneration while this is happening, right? It says mana regeneration from focus is half as effective, but you know, we still have good AoE damage. We still have like Fractured Crown giving us 50% damage dealt to mana before health. Like, love to see this kind of thing. You should know in case you haven't seen like things like this before. Damage dealt to mana before health kind of has damage reduction built into it. Every 1 point of mana covers 5 health, I think. So it's not quite as scary as you would think that it is. Like coming from Path of Exile, for example, where it's like 1-to-1. Like when you do damage dealt to mana, there is like a tiny bit of shenanigans that go into it, which makes it easier for you to deal with. Of course, this person also has 2,000 mana, so it looks like they dealt with it quite well. Love to see it. Love it. Oh, spell damage while channeling. Spell damage while channeling. That's interesting. I like it. Cool. So this was the highest performing COF, I guess like COF as a happenstance, but this is the highest performing Sorc build in Arena. Happens to be COF. Very interesting that it's a damage dealt to mana build. In solo, in the world of solo, this build did not perform particularly well, but it was an interesting thing to shout out. And I think, let me pull this up again. I think that this was the highest in solo, not mage. Whoops, not mage. Where is it? I'm going Sorc. Yeah, okay. So it's the highest. Not particularly competitive, but we're still going to talk about it because it's interesting. So this is a 284 waves in solo COF ladder. And this person opted to go low life. So I just wanted to shout it out. Like, people are still experimenting with these kinds of things. This is a low life Frostbite Frostclaw character. So Frostbite Frostclaw, we're going to be grabbing these nodes in the Runemaster skill tree, converting Armor Shred into Frostbite Chance. And then in the Sorc skill tree, we're not getting too much out of it, but we are getting access to like Arcane Avalanche, I guess, some cast speed nodes, some cooldown recovery speed. When I look at this, like I look at the top of the skill tree here, like what am I gaining by being this? I'm getting spell damage, but I'm not scaling spell damage. Mana's not really helping me here, and like these nodes, they're not doing too much here. So I'd be interested to see like a Runemaster version of this as well, just to see like what's the same, what's going to be different. So we have a tiny bit of Frostbite stuff. We're using a Wrong Warp. In the past, I tried using this with a Scepter instead, with like the minus mana cost Scepter. But Wrong Warp, it's got damage on it. It's got spell damage. I guess it has a lot of cast speed too. Yeah, I guess if we use Teleport, we get another 35 cast speed, and we're using like we're either major acolytes, we actually get to make use of the Chrono Warp stuff there. What stands out to me about the Frostclaw portion of this, it's like normally when I would build a Frostclaw, I would take this node on the very bottom, this Hand of Morditis, to get those extra projectiles, but it would also increase my mana cost. So maybe if you don't increase the mana cost, maybe you can still take the Volley, where it's a bunch of individual projectiles, and you can still take all of these repeat nodes here, and then still grab the Elemental Nova. So maybe it's like a mana cost consideration, and I would expect that it is, because like it's a very obvious node to take otherwise. And then Ellie Nova spec'd for a bunch of more damage multipliers, a little bit of extra AoE, and the minus mana cost over here just to tie the room together. So, of course, in Frostclaw, we have our Ice Barrage, 1 point over there, giving our Ice Barrage, and then on the very bottom left of Ice Barrage, we have 60% more global cold damage. So I like to see that people are still trying to innovate with this. I'd be interested in seeing a Runemaster version. I'd be interested in seeing a non-low life version as well. It's like what's good, what's bad, which one's better. And I guess I'm thinking over here, this node is chance to refund mana cost, additional spell damage. So this character is like level 99, I think, right? 99. I guess if you're going to go as Sorc and you're going to do these big mana things, I'd be interested in seeing like what's this build look like if we're also including Archmage. Because like we have, I guess, 300 mana here. Can we get more mana? Can we get like more mana? Oh, I don't know. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and I don't think it's like solved, right? So this is 284 waves in Arena, so it's not particularly competitive. We know that Sorc is one of the least competitive and least popular things going on right now, but people are still trying to innovate, and like we don't know what the right answer is. So if you're interested in exploring, this seems like an interesting place to be. I like it. Very cool. So that covers it. That is covering every single mastery, at least one build for every single mastery in Last Epoch right now. Kind of a review of what's going on in the arena for patch 1.2. I love to see this kind of thing. Like, I don't play arena myself, but I've done lots of arena in the past. Specifically, I've done like the short form weekend races that used to exist in Last Epoch a long time ago, before 1.0, before we had online play for Last Epoch. So those aren't supported right now, but like, man, I got into Last Epoch when there were community races, and I got into Last Epoch when there's like a good reason to play in the arena, because there was a lot of fun. There's a lot of camaraderie around that. So even though I don't personally play arena anymore, I'm glad that we still get to do reviews and see what people are doing in arena. And man, every time I make one of these videos, I wonder, like, is EHG gonna watch this video? Are they gonna remember those community races that used to happen in the past? Because oh my goodness, they were so much fun. Like, give me some kind of private league that I can opt into for a weekend and just like race and do as many waves in the arena as I can. It was a fun time back then, but people still enjoy doing arena right now, and I certainly still enjoy doing a review of it right now to see what they're doing. If you like this kind of content, make sure to leave a comment on the video. Let me know what kind of stuff you want to see in the future, or maybe what builds or variations you are playing or you are seeing within your friend group or circle of people who are playing Last Epoch right now. Cool. All right, so that does it. This is a super long video. It doesn't need to be any longer. If you like this kind of stuff, like, subscribe, do that kind of thing. I'll see you next time.